Good day, Junior Tuckies. I'm Mrs. Beardenkamp, and today's lesson I will cover active and passive voice. What is active and passive voice? Active voice is what we usually use in everyday life. It sounds more natural to our ear. An active voice sentence will have the subject doing the action. Passive voice is used when we want to emphasize a certain part of a sentence, like breakfast is served. In a passive sentence, the object is having the action done to it. Let's look at an example for active voice. Remember, the subject is performing the action. The boy kicks the ball. The boy, our subject, is doing the action of kicking the ball, our object. Let's look at a passive voice example. Remember, the subject becomes the object in the sentence. So, for example, the ball, previously the object, now becomes the subject of the passive sentence, is kicked, and we need to change that verb tense. By, we always add by when we are answering a sentence in passive voice, and then the boy, previously our subject, has now become the object of the sentence. Reading it a little bit easier as the ball is kicked by the boy. Let's look at how we need to change tense in each sentence on the next slide. Tense change will always happen whether you're changing the sentence from active to passive or passive back to active. This means that you need to know your tenses. Let's have a look at the blue table first. This is the active voice tense table. If a voice in the active sentence falls within one of these blocks when changing it over to the passive voice, you will need to change the tense. I know that sounds very complicated, so let's look at some examples. Number 1, the boy kicks the ball. This is in active voice. The verb kicks is in present tense. If I look at the blue table, I can see my sentence there with the correct answer. However, I now need to change my active sentence into the passive voice. As kicks is in present tense, you will see in the orange block that the present tense must change to is kicked by in order for the passive voice sentence to be grammatically correct. I advise that you study this table off by heart. It will also help you with doing any direct and reported speech questions too. Let's look at the sentence now in the passive voice. The ball is kicked by the boy. Let's look at how we can change a sentence from active voice to passive voice. These are the rules. Number 1, start off by underlining the verb. Number 2, find the subject, the verb, and the object in the sentence. Or an easier way to remember this is SVO. Number 3, start the new sentence with the object. Number 4, change the tense of the sentence. You can use this, or do this rather, by using the tense table in the previous slide. Number 5, remember to add by into the sentence. And number 6, end the sentence with the subject from the active voice. Let's look at an example. Number 1, the teacher teaches the class. Let's start with our steps. Step 1, underline the verb. The verb in the active sentence is teaches. Now, step 2, find the subject, verb, and the object. The subject is the teacher, teaches is the verb, and the class is the object. Step 3, begin the sentence with the object. So the sentence will begin with the class. Step 4, change the tense of the verb. Remember to use the tense table to help you. The sentence will now read, the class is taught. Step 5, remember to add by. The sentence will now read, the class is taught by. And the final step, end off with the subject from the active sentence. The class is taught by the teacher. Now you have successfully changed the sentence from active to passive voice. Let's look at a couple more examples on the next slide. Number 2. The dog chased the ball. Step 1. Chased is the verb. Step 2. The dog is the subject in the active sentence, chased is the verb, and ball is the object. Step 3. We now need to begin the new sentence with the object from the active sentence. So the sentence will read, the ball. Step 4. Now we need to change tense. Chased is in the past tense. Remember to use the tense table. So in our active sentence, it will now read, the ball was chased. Step 5, we need to add by. So the new sentence, or rather, the passive sentence will read, the ball was chased by. Then we need to end off with the subject from the active sentence, reading, the ball was chased by the dog. Number 3, the girls will play netball. Step 1, will play is the verb. Step 2, the girls is the subject, will play is the verb, and netball is the object in the active sentence. Step 3, we now need to begin the passive sentence with the object from the active sentence. So, the new sentence will read, netball. Step 4, check the tense table. Will play must be changed to will be played. So the passive sentence will read, netball will be played. Step 5, remember to add by. The passive sentence will now read, netball will be played by, and then step 6, end off with the subject of the active sentence. The passive sentence will now read, netball will be played by the girls. Number 4, the boys will play the soccer match. Step 1, will play is the verb. Step 2, the boys is the subject in the active sentence, will play is the verb, and the soccer match is the object in the active sentence. Step 3, we need to begin the passive sentence with the object from our active sentence. So the sentence will read, the soccer match. Step 4, remember to use the tense table to change the tense. Will be changed to will be played. The passive sentence will read, the soccer match will be played. Step 5, remember to add by. And the new sentence will read, the soccer match will be played by, and finally ending off with the subject from the active sentence. The new passive sentence will read, the soccer match will be played by the boys. Let's look at another rule of active and passive voice. This happens to involve pronouns. When changing a sentence from active to passive voice, we will make use of either of these tables. This is the natural way that most English-speaking people will do. We do not need to look at this table in order to see. But if you do struggle with this element of English, using these tables, you will never ever go wrong. Let's look at an example to show you what I mean. The first example is, she played a netball game. If I'm going to change the sentence to the passive voice, the netball game was played by her. She changes to her. Another example, we watched a movie in the active voice. Now changing it to the passive voice, a movie was watched by us. The pronoun we changes to the pronoun us. Let's look at a couple more examples. Number 1, we keep our coffee cups here. Step 1, keep is the verb. Step 2, we is the subject, keep is the verb, and our coffee cups is the object in the active sentence. Step 3, we now need to begin the next sentence or the passive sentence with the object from our active sentence. So it will read, our coffee cups. Here you will see that I changed we to our. Step 4. Change the tense using the tense table. The passive sentence will now read, our coffee cups are kept. Step 5. Do we need to add by to the sentence? Let's try it out. Our coffee cups are kept by here. No, that doesn't sound correct. You will have to use your own knowledge when using or adding by into the sentence. Step 6. End off the subject from the active sentence and the new passive sentence will read, our coffee cups are kept here. You will notice that here did not move around in our sentence. If there is anything to do with time and place, it remains in that position in the sentence. Number 2, they will take a decision soon. Step 1, will take is the verb. Step 2, they is the subject, will take is the verb, and a decision is the object. Step 3, we need to begin the passive sentence with the object from the active sentence, a decision. Step 4, change tenses using the tense table. The passive sentence will now read, a decision will be taken. Step 5, do we need to add by? Also note that we will not complete the sentence by saying a decision will be made by them soon. In passive sentences, we do not mention the doer as it often sounds clumsy. So the new sentence will read, a decision will be taken soon. Commands and questions. Commands. When changing an active command to a passive command, always remember to use the same punctuation and the verbs that are associated with a command. Let's look at an example. Number 1, read the book by Tuesday. Step 1, read is the verb in the sentence. The book is the subject, read is the verb, but do we have an object? Can it be Tuesday? No. Therefore, in this sentence, we do not have an object. Tuesday will stay in the same position in the passive voice. Step 3. The book will start the sentence although it is the subject of the sentence. Step 4. Remember to change the tense using the tense table. So, the passive sentence will now read, the book must be read. Step 5, add by. The book must be read by. And step 6, although there is no object in the passive sentence, this particular passive sentence will end off with Tuesday. So, the passive voice sentence will read, the book must be read by Tuesday. And remember that exclamation mark. Number 2, cook supper now. Step 1, cook is the verb. Step 2, supper is the subject and cook is the verb. Is there an object in the sentence? No. Step 3, supper will start this sentence although it is the subject in the previous sentence. Remember, or step 4, remember to change the tenses using the tense table. Supper must be cooked. Step 5, there is no object in the sentence, so the passive sentence will now read, supper must be cooked now. Let's look at a question in the active and passive voice. A top tip here is if an active sentence asks who, the passive sentence will always contain by whom. Step 1. Or rather, let's look at the sentence. Who wrote this letter? Step 1. Wrote is the verb in the sentence. Step 2. Who is the subject? Wrote is the verb and the letter is the object in the active sentence. Step 3. Begin the passive sentence with the object from the active sentence. Step 4. Remember to change the tense using the tense table. The letter was written. Step 5. Remember to add by. The passive sentence will now read, the letter was written by, And step 6, end off with the subject of the active sentence. The letter was written by whom? And don't forget that question mark. Alright, Junior Tuckies, I hope this lesson helped you along the lines of doing questions in active and passive voice. Next up is register.